volatility is back with a vengeance. Asian stocks continue the global sell-off, while US and UK futures, they're pointing to a higher open. Moving beyond Brexit, European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker gives his State of the Union speech. That's in Strasbourg. Boosting the bid, Bayer is said to be proposing a higher offer of $56.5 billion for the agricultural firm Monsanto and doubling the break fee. And Unilever CEO Paul Polman tells Bloomberg that central bank stimulus is limiting real economic growth.
The reality is, it is not giving us the growth that we were expecting. And the reason for that is that the system is too much stacked towards the capital market and not towards what some people call the real economy.
You're welcome to Countdown. I'm Manus Crenny.
And I'm Anna Edwards. Very warm welcome to the program, everybody. It's just gone 7 o'clock here in London. We're getting news from the luxury goods maker Hermes. This, of course, the luxury goods maker based in Paris, maker of Kelly bags and silk scarves, abandoning its midterm ex-currency sales growth target of 8%. They're talking about a challenging market in Asia, excluding Japan. Also talking about the context being challenging in Hong Kong and Macau, seems to be the word of the statement this morning. They say the context in America is, quote, still uncertain. So on the upside, they are confirming their full year 2016 sales growth target, and they're giving us their numbers for the first half of the year, which don't look to be a million miles away from what was expected at the net level. So first half net profit came in at 545 million, and the estimate was 546 million. The operating income has come in at 826.8 million, which is actually above the estimate of 818.5 million. So backward looking, not too bad, but in terms of the messaging they're giving, they're talking about sales growth targets being ambitious and not quantified, and they're talking about the challenges ahead and abandoning this midterm ex-currency sales growth target of 8%. It's a company that's increased the production of leather goods, of course. This is the company's largest and most profitable division, with some items commanding waiting lists, so they tell me, Manus, that can run up to a year.
Yes. Did she wait for a year for her Kelly bag? I don't know. Listen, it ties in with the Richemont story, which is they've also had a tough time. Their sales were down by 13%. They're buying back watches from the shops and the retailers in Hong Kong. Let's talk about markets, shall we? Futures are indicated. We're playing a little bit of a turnaround here. We've got London, Paris and Frankfurt all switching it around. I mean, the title we had at 6 a.m. was that misery loves company. But you are seeing just a bit of a flick around in some of the asset classes. US equity futures are also slightly higher. The question on everybody's mind is, when you've had this kind of moment of volatility, everybody's complaining about how quiet it was, how low the vol was, how repressed the volatility was. Let's have a look at the US futures. December Dow indicated up 0.1%. SPOs are indicated up 0.2%. That repressed volatility, it's back with a vengeance. And the question is cash the new asset class king, according to Bank of America?
Let's bring up the risk radar and show you where we've been overnight on various asset classes. Equity markets over in Asia, then down today, down by 0.7% on the MSCI Asia Pacific, down 0.3% on MSCI emerging markets. The broader Asia measure down for a fifth day, but it is some weakness in emerging markets that seems to be following through from the general sell-off in assorted assets that we saw yesterday, as you mentioned, Manus. Dollar yen in there as well. We've got weakness coming through in the Japanese currency, down 0.4% against the US dollar, but that's failing to lift Japanese exporters because Japanese equities stressing more really about what the BOJ is going to do and what that's going to do to bank stocks in particular.
Absolutely. Let's have a look at the bond market, because I think what's happening here is, again, we had 30-year government bond auctions in the United States of America. Yes, I mean, not that it failed, but the bid to cover ratio was certainly lower than we've seen in the past 10 auctions. 2.13 times covered. Previously, the previous 10 was 2.33. The primary dealers took a lot of the paper off the issuance hands. German government bond yields back, obviously, in the positive territory, but then all of this money that's rushed in there, the question is, will it stay? That interest rate differential back in Japan and the Fed next week. JGBs. Nikkei has the article this morning that the next week the Bank of Japan are going to look more at negative rates than they are at quantitative easing. What does that do to the yield curve in Japan? Well, the question is, can that steepening continue?
Let's get the Bloomberg First Word News. Here's Heidi Lunn. Thanks, Anna. President Obama has criticized what he called Donald Trump's adulation of Vladimir Putin, saying that the billionaire considers the Russian leader a role model. It was part of a broad attack on the Republican nominee's fitness for the presidency as Obama spoke at a campaign rally for Hillary Clinton in Philadelphia. Meanwhile, 8 weeks from Election Day, and Democrats are feeling queasy about Hillary Clinton's narrowing lead over Donald Trump. The Real Clear Politics average of polls has the property tycoon within just 2.5 points of his rival. Bayer is said to be proposing an increased offer as it tries to clinch the acquisition of Monsanto to create the world's biggest maker of seeds and pesticides. People familiar with the matter say Bayer is willing to raise a bid to $129 a share, or $56.5 billion. That's 22% above Monsanto's closing price in New York yesterday. Spokespeople for both companies have declined to comment on the new proposal. The CEO of one of the world's biggest consumer goods makers says Britain's vote to leave the European Union happened because citizens felt let down by the system. Speaking in an exclusive interview with Francine Lacroix, Unilever CEO Paul Polman gave his views on the need for a more inclusive economy.
Many have not seen their incomes go up for the last 20, 30 years, worried about their children having jobs, their pensions being secured, and they see increasingly a world that is stacked against them. It is as much a vote against the current system that is not designed for them as it was, according to some people, for Brussels or immigrants or other things.
Global News 24 hours a day, powered by more than 2,600 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. You can find more stories on the Bloomberg at Top Go. I'm Heidi Lund. This is Bloomberg. Anna Manis.
Heidi, thank you very much. Let's get into the markets now in Asia. We're set for a slightly better tone here in Europe. US equity futures are up. What's it doing? What's the reverberations at the end of the session in Asia? David?
Well, we're not quite getting that bid at the end of the session, and I think it also comes down to timing, because at this time, it's 2 p.m. here in Hong Kong, you have a lot of the major markets closing up shop. Hong Kong is just about the only one in China that will be trading. Singapore, yeah, to a lesser extent. Now, let me get started with a look at the currencies, because, we talk about this cohesiveness between asset classes, or this correlation really remaining strong. And I think when you look at what happened in Asia this Wednesday, that's another good example of that happening. So have a look at currencies. There's a lot of demand for dollars right now, obviously. Dollar yen, dollar ringgit, dollar rupee, mostly getting a decent bid as well. Not all, though, are falling against the US dollar. You have a select few like the renminbi is also getting bought up. Have a look at equity markets right now. So we showed currencies, bonds, I'll show you in a bit. Equities are mostly lower, 5th straight day of decline. So this most recent leg of downside, we're down by about 4% from late last week. Now, I guess if you do want to get a better understanding or better sense here in Asia, at least, of what the expectations are, does the Fed hike earlier, you look at Southeast Asia. For obvious reasons, when we start talking about the Fed hiking rates, this market tends to get sold off and money gets pulled out. And it's not a coincidence that this market, last 4 weeks, has only been up 3 times. Every single time, besides those 3, the market's gotten sold off. Jakarta, for example, Indonesia, down 1.5%, poised for its biggest 3-day drop since October of last year. Thailand was on a similar slide up until Monday of this week, so we're seeing a little bit of a rebound for that market. Rate decision, by the way, comes out in about 90 minutes from now. Rest of Asia, we're down, roughly speaking, about 0.5%. Japan, though, closing up shop. And of course, we're just talking about the banks, and clearly the underperformer today. Have a look at financials on the topics index. There we go. Reddest of the reds, 1.6%. And again, on this report from the Nikkei News, that if the BOJ does act to adjust its stimulus package, it's going to be on the rate side and taking it down further, and obviously hurting the net interest margins of these banks. Guys?
David, thank you very much. David Ingles in Hong Kong. The European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker is set to give us his vision for Europe later when he gives his annual State of the Union speech.
Brexit, growth and migration are just a few of the issues that he's expected to touch on. Bloomberg's Francine Lacroix is at the European Parliament in Strasbourg. She joins us live now ahead of this morning's speech. So, Francine, this is going to be a broad church of subjects that he's going to touch on. What do you think is going to percolate to the top?
Well, I think people will be a little bit disappointed, Manis and Anna, that he will not say as much as we would hope on Brexit. Now, we understand that the president's position is, look, Brexit has been voted for. It hasn't actually happened. There was a joke going around yesterday in Strasbourg where the European Parliament is meeting at the State of the Union, which, by the way, starts in an hour, where it said, well, our inbox was still empty as this morning, and they expect it to be empty in terms of the notification of Article 50 for quite some time. So Juncker has a unique position where he has to acknowledge Brexit, where he says this is an existential question, also because in preparing his speech he went to all heads of state of the 28 member countries and he was asking them what they wanted to talk about. He was asking them the proposals that they wanted to put forward, and it's very clear that the president was then coming back disappointed that there was less common interest than there was even 12 months ago. So Brexit will be mentioned. He will talk about the fact that it puts in play some kind of existential question about Europe, but he won't address it head on. Again, this is a 90-minute speech, guys, so he'll be touching on various other things.
Yeah, talk to us about those various other things then, Francine. Plenty of issues for the EU to grapple with. Are we going to learn more about ambitions with regards to migration and indeed fiscal stimulus, perhaps?
Right, so that's what we're hoping for, Anna. This is what the European Central Bank President, Mario Draghi, has been asking for, this fiscal stimulus. The problem if you're the Commission, and the problem if you're markets and expecting that silver bullet from the Commission, is that you probably won't get it today. Why, Anna? Well, this is very simple, is that if you have weak member states, and we are expecting Mr. Jean-Claude Juncker to talk about the state of Europe as being fragile, as being frail at the moment, then the Commission can't really be strong. If you look at the State of the Union, it's very different to what we're seeing from the States, because the Commission is not really an executive arm. What they do is execute the will of member states. They can do proposals, but then they also have to be absorbed by national countries. So if you have 28 weak states and one, the UK, which is about to leave, then it makes it very difficult for them to have proposals which have teeth, but expect a little bit of agreement on immigration. We'll hear about the fiscal pact. We'll hear also about maybe growth projects, infrastructure spending. Overall, though, it's not the